When I was growing up in post-war London slums, somehow I realised quite early, as I looked around, that one third of the people on my street survived honestly, another third managed dishonestly, and the other third just went under whatever they tried. I guess I was saying that every third house in my street was either a brothel or a Dickensian thieves' kitchen, where everyone in the family has got something that's a bit dodgy and makes money illegally. And you can't stay unaffected by that. One of the questions that I asked very often of myself was, where is God and where is his church on my street? Because they were nowhere to be seen. And the interesting thing, of course, is back in those days, everybody had a Christian assembly at school in the morning. So clearly we heard Bible stories. And then in the afternoon, before we went home, we had story time. But as our school didn't have many books, mostly they were Bible stories too. So at least I had the opportunity to hear what Jesus was saying and what he was doing. And it made perfect sense to me as I thought about the world in which I was living. As a very precocious 7-year-old, I thought, if we did those things, the world would be a much better place. However, I never saw the church on my street. As I grew up, I took myself into churches just to hear and to listen, but it was an alien environment entirely. The priests, the vicars, always had a whole string of letters after their name. They didn't sound like the people in my street, and they clearly didn't think like them. Long sermons going way over the heads of the people who were sat in the pews. And no messages about how they might get out of church and come to my street. One day I was sitting on a friend's front step. I was waiting for him to finish his tea so he could come out and we could go play football. Behind the big hedge and in the next porch were two girls who were from my class at school, and at that moment they were 8 or 9 years old. So I sat quietly and listened to what they were saying. One of them said, "I think I'm going to be a prostitute when I grow up. Mum does it on a Saturday night when she's short of cash." And the other one replied, "Oh yeah, Auntie Kathy does it all the time." And I sat there thinking, is that really the biggest ambition that we give children? No one had ever given me any insight on what to do anyway. And next door to me was a brothel. 2 young women were sisters. They were married to 2 gang members locally. Their husbands were in prison, so they lived in the house with their children, and that's how they had to live. One night, a car came up the road opposite my house, went round the corner on 2 wheels, and they fired several bullets in through the front window. And that was a reminder that the 2 girls had to keep working and working harder. On another occasion, I was playing football in the street up against my front wall. An ambulance turned up next door, and one of the sisters was carried out on a stretcher. She'd been sliced open from here to her belly. And I wondered what on earth this world was really all about. Where was the church on my street? Well, having been to church and realised that the church didn't sound much like Jesus, I had to conclude that I couldn't be a Christian. That there would be no point. And it was over many years as I grew up that I didn't realise at the time, but as well as working honestly, I would spend my spare time working, doing youth work, voluntary youth work, community development work in my spare time. And slowly God was just reeling me in, until finally I did join the church. And within 10 years, for some inexplicable reason, they insisted that I become a priest. In every parish that I have worked in, if I had a choice of where it was a poor parish. And I only realised shortly before I retired that I had actually spent my entire life trying to be the answer to the question that any child might ask: where is the church on my street? The church was in their schools. The church was on their street because I walked around. And the church was in their life. And as a church, I made sure that my congregations were also on the streets, and that we were providing experiences which would help what I called the lost generations of Sydenham in one parish. Help them to grow up with a better picture of the world, with much better experiences than I had ever had. And I thank God that for so many that worked. It's a work that I now miss terribly, being retired. I still do church work, but I'm a bit too old for playing killer rugby. So I don't get involved in any of that. But thank you for listening, and I hope that if you belong to a church, you might make your church get out onto the street. And if you're asking the same question, we'll go to the church and ask them, really, why are they not there? Thank you.